since we were talking about the Democratic response to things, we just, outlined for an hour almost, maybe 45 minutes, the plan that is on the right, for lack of a better term, to undermine our government. We are seeing basically, broadly speaking, 2 or 3 different constituencies meld together. Heritage Foundation, longtime Republican conservative thinkers. Steve Bannon, a sort of like pseudo-populist, ethno-nationalist, or like hyper-nationalist, somewhat thuggy fasci, and this sort of tech bro fascist, monarchist, authoritarian impulse, all come together with an agenda that they can agree on, that being the destruction of the administrative state. Tech bros want to sprinkle onto this like some type of AI, sort of futuristic vision. But at the end of the day, there's still this sort of like, from them, neo-Leo Straussian vision of them being in charge, a neo-aristocracy or neo-feudalism. And then also, there's this nice mixture of like a theocratic feudalism, which is really very similar. I mean, all feudal regimes that we've had for the most part in our history have been ultimately founded on the idea that, well, the king is there because of God. Not necessarily maybe the theocratic rule, but certainly the basis of their authority comes from God. So all of this is coming together. We're facing this dilemma. We have no legislative power. We have no real democratic leaders who are presenting themselves. There's a couple. And here is one person vying for that role of leader. He is the chair of the, what is it?
Or ranking member.
I should say, the ranking member from the Democrats. They voted for him to be, because they wanted him to be the bannerman on the committee, the House Oversight Committee. Because this is a position where these guys are going to have the opportunity to sort of show and communicate to the American public what is going on is fundamentally wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Jerry Connolly, one of the most sprightly cancer patients you've ever seen.
Question is to you, sir, why would Republicans block bringing Musk in for questioning? And why wouldn't Musk, I mean, he's been very vocal on X, why wouldn't he just want to come in and talk about his intentions?
Good questions all. My motion to subpoena him, I thought, would have some broader support on the Republican side. It had none. You mentioned that they squashed it, but they had a scramble. They were collecting people and running into that hearing room, and they were able to table the motion on a 1-vote majority, 20-19. But the entire
Okay, pause it for a second. This is the part that makes this clip amazing. This is you can't see her, but Alex Witt, MSNBC's Alex Witt responds, and I will tell you something. If you have children, you know the response that she just gave. Mm-hmm. And if you ultimately ever have children, you will come to understand this response. This is like you are encouraging a child from something that really doesn't really shock you, but you're like, okay, you were able to take a poop. Good for you.
Half of it is on the seat, but good job.
Good for you. No, but no. Whoa,
Jerry's
good.
like, the Republicans were really owned. You didn't see it, but trust me, they were scrambling behind the scenes.
They had to scramble.
Wow.
Oh, we have been very effective. They had to scramble.
Their handshake before they punched us in the face.
You have absolutely no idea. They were running around like, what's going on? I can't find my notebook. It was hilarious.
Until they found it.
Okay, go back and just like, you can hear Alex Witt like, whoa. I mean, God.
You mentioned that they squashed it, but they had a scramble. They were collecting people and running into that hearing room, and they were able to table the motion on a 1-vote majority, 20-19. But the entire tenor and topic of the hearing shifted to Elon Musk, didn't it? So we achieved our goal. And we're going to use the hearings. We're going to use every part of the bullet pool we've got to continue to hold them accountable. Who is this unelected South African emigre who's the world's wealthiest man, apparently, running the U.S. government? Who elected him to do anything?
Well, she's blown away by that. Okay, here's the thing. I would just put the image back up on the screen. Okay, just put the split screen between the two of them back up there, because I just want to point something out. He's going to try and communicate to the American public, right? And he's doing this by telling us about what happened in a committee where the Republicans there had to really scramble. The number of people who saw that committee could fit in this room is my guess. And I got news for you. The Majority Report headquarters, not
huge.
Not huge. Hey, dude, if you're going to do hits on national television, how about put it back up? How about not doing it? Like if somebody showed up to do an interview with us and they're looking down in their laptop like this. Okay, yeah, put it on the screen. Like, yeah, they're looking down in their laptop like this. They got no microphone. Invest in a $25 microphone. You're talking to the American public. You don't know how to do this. You don't know how to play this game. You are not equipped for this. You may be a very great congressman. You may be very nice. You may have great voting record. You are not equipped to do this. Your staff is not equipped to do this. No one associated with you is equipped to do this. The people who elected you over AOC are not equipped to do this. Yep. Look in the mirror, understand the stakes that are going on, and say, I'm stepping aside. This is just absurd. It's absurd.
And even if it was a Democrat who I don't think my politics would align with at all, like Jasmine Crockett, who took money from crypto and has voted to arm Israel. At least she fights and is partisan and
what are you talking about?
Right.
I can do this. What are you talking about?
The Democrats are really ill-equipped, not just to meet this moment in terms of the severity of the constitutional crisis that we're facing, but also in terms of the communication style.
But Emma,
hey,
you should have seen how they scrambled.
Oh, you're real.
You should have seen how they scrambled in the hearing room. They didn't know what they were doing.
The Republican panic, you wouldn't know her. We went to camp together. She goes to another school. But they're ill-equipped to meet the moment.
We locked the bathroom, and then for a long time they had to run around and try and find the key. It was great. Jesus Christ.
Okay. You good? You got it out of your system?
No.
Oh, all right. Well, the media environment, again, there's so much to consume, so much. And people can pick what they want. They can pick whatever podcast they want to hear, whatever. All of it's online. All of it's about getting people to click. You know who gets people to click is AOC. You know who gets people to pay attention to what you're saying? It's AOC. She knows how to communicate with people either directly in this kind of format or on social media. And that's what oversight is supposed to be about. That's why Pelosi stuck her on there in the first place. This is supposed to be about performing politics. That's really the primary function of that, performing partisan politics. And they had an opportunity to put one of our best communicators on that front at the top of it, and they chose this guy instead.
It really is just.
It was his turn.
Right. Seniority.
Sometimes you don't take your turn. I don't think, I think when seniority benefits Bernie Sanders, I think it should be absolutely respected, basically above anything else. But at a certain point, the people need to look themselves in the face am I the leader for this moment? And this party just clearly has none of that instilled institutionally.
Did you deliberately invoke Hillary Clinton with the it's his turn? Because that was the exact same problem back then.
No,
I mean,
they just said the same thing.
And the Republicans don't have this. You'll notice that the Republicans don't have this problem because they don't have, and AOC explained this to us a few months ago when she came on our show, they don't have seniority rules. But the Democrats do. Maybe scrap those because right now the seniority and like the institutional my turn politics don't meet this moment. The Republicans are able to have more turnover, sometimes for better or for worse, with the Speaker or the House stuff, but because they don't have those artificial constraints. But it's all about protecting guys like Jerry Connolly when it should be about, oh my God, we are maybe speed running towards authoritarianism. Can we at least have people that can do partisanship?
Connolly is such a dinosaur. He was a co-sponsor of PAYGO in 2010.
Oy.
He co-sponsored PAYGO.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, let's look at some decent examples, at least, of of messaging to some extent.
They're starting to get it together.
Some. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is a sort of a perfect entity in which to make this clear. Like USAID was chosen, I think, because Americans reflexively know nothing about their government and they don't care about foreign aid. And there are, valid complaints from the left on some of these sort of like more submerged, nefarious things that are imperialistic that USAID does. And of course, because at one point they help people out, there's also, conservatives are happy to attack that agency because they're people who are not, they're from other countries and not all white ones. But the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is literally is bulletproof in terms of selling it to the American public. For every dollar spent at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which comes out of the the Fed and isn't even tax dollars, for every dollar spent, like 20 comes back to American citizens who are consumers of various financial products, credit cards, banks, maybe they deal with debt, et cetera, et cetera.
And this is the scam period right now. The Trump administration with all its crypto guys, they want to do more of that. So the CFPB gets in the way and they never say the full acronym. They'll never spell it out. They say CFPB because they don't want to let people know that they're gutting the thing that protects consumers. To your point on the math, an $800 million cost and it's returned $21 billion.
It's more than 1 to 20
to the consumers.
And it's
but
not
that's
just
over
Musk,
time. But yeah,
like Zuckerberg is also somebody who's has an eye on banking sort of things. Not to mention all of these sort of scams that are hosted on Facebook that I think the CFPB would also want to look at.
The two things that the Trump administration signaled they were going to overturn, I think it was yesterday or the day before, was one, the idea of medical debt showing up on your credit report. Under the Biden administration, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau basically said you can't put medical debt on your credit report. So if you get hit by a bus and you owe all this money all of a sudden, it shouldn't reflect your credit risk going forward. The second one was overdraft fees for banks. And what banks were doing is they were structuring your overdrafts in such a way to collect more fees. How do they do that? Let's say you have $400 in your bank and your electric bill costs $150. So you pay that $150. Now you've got $250 in your bank account, but you get into a fender bender. You got to pay for your car. It's $390 or $400. Let's say. They would not be able to strike you for an overdraft if they took that first charge first. Mm-hmm. But what they do is they delay these charges onto your account. And they can sometimes spread this over a couple of days. They will invert those charges. So the $400 charge, they'll go first and they'll go, you overdraft. Let's say you had $399 in your account. You overdraft and then you did the cable bill or the electric bill and then you overdraft again. Whereas you meant to pay the electric bill first, $150. Okay, I get $250 there. Now I pay the $400 for my car, and I overdraft. You would have had one overdraft, but they structure it so you actually have two. The same transactions, they just invert those transactions so that you pay extra fees. They're literally rolling that back. How can you say, and I dispute the fact that anybody said this in the first place, but in what planet is this something you could sell to any voters at anywhere? Anywhere. Here is Chris Van Hollen at the rally out in front of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau yesterday. Hundreds of people there, which is sort of impressive, to come out to protest the essentially shutting down of an agency. Here's Van Hollen.
We have another senator coming up, and remind me, what are we asking our elected officials right now? Something about withholding something. Withhold your vote. Senator Chris Van Hollen, my senator from Maryland, I got to ask you, are you willing to withhold your vote until this constitutional crisis is over?
I am, and no more business as usual in the United States Senate. Let's give it up for Elizabeth.
Stop billionaire grift in the background. Stop Elon's takeover. Let's make it about the billionaires. Let's make it about the not good billionaires. Let's not make a distinction. Make it about the billionaires. It's good. Finally.
This guy wasn't my favorite choice, Ammo, in this Rhode Island congressional race. I can't remember who he was running against, but Ammo was certainly not my favorite.
It was Aaron Regenberg, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Who was like more of the progressive choice.
But
this was good rhetoric at least.
But at the very least, I'll take it where we can get it today. Here is Gabe Ammo of Rhode Island at that same rally.
And let's hear it again for the great people of the CFPB. See, the thing is, Trump and Musk and their billionaire buddies know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. But there are millions of Americans who are just tuning in. So we have to let them know what we're standing up for. So I have a few questions for you. What's wrong with protecting consumers? Nothing. What's wrong with eliminating junk fees? Nothing. What is wrong with avoiding foreclosures? Nothing. What is wrong with making sure that banks don't take every single penny out of your account when you ain't got nothing in it? Not a damn thing is wrong with the work of the CFPB. In fact, it represents all that is right, protecting Americans. And so I say to Elon, take your hands off. Take your hands off the CFPB because the American people are watching. And we're not just watching. We are getting loud. We are on the streets. We are going to be everywhere, making it heard that we are not going to stand for an America run by billionaires.
I wish they would take a note from Emma and call it the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
He did say protecting consumers, but they should spell it out every time.
Keep saying a CFPB.
As if everyone is a lawyer from D.C. who knows.
Well, but here's the thing, is that the right uses acronyms to obfuscate and to hide what things mean.
DEI.
Right? DEI. As opposed to,
CRT, right, Matt? Yeah.
And CRT.
Yeah.
But when you are happy to say the mission, Environmental Protection Agency explains exactly what it does.
Yeah.
The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That sounds pretty good, actually.
But I thought the quibble you were going to make is that my other fear now is that they're doing the same thing with the cleaving of Elon from the Republican Party. As I watched that, I was like, oh, this rhetoric's pretty good. But here I have my pessimism bubbling up. Because I think that they're led by poll testing, and Elon's poll numbers are dropping.
Yes.
And Trump's poll numbers are still kind of good. because it's a honeymoon period, sure, but they can't just make one boogeyman because it polls in that way. And
Trump benefits because when he finally axes him in 8 months.
Yeah, and where's Hakeem Jeffries? Hakeem Jeffries should be on the front. I mean, Chuck Schumer, actually, I'm fine with him just shutting up. But Hakeem Jeffries, he's supposed to be at least winning the trust of the caucus.
But what leverage does he have?
Right.
He has no leverage.
I know. Oh.
He should resign.
He should. He should. He's got to go. He is not meeting this moment. And even standard Democrats are out there. Van Hollen is not in DSA, but they're at the very least showing up to defend the American people. And Hakeem Jeffries is at the podium making excuses. Supposed to be the leader of the party.
Well, Hakeem Jeffries was on with Jon Stewart, right? Let's watch this. I mean, he is really
you see why they
the soaring rhetoric
party for
is
so
just impressive here. Here he is with Jon Stewart. Is that actual room? Why does it look like he's in front,
in a lighthouse?
Like a weird.
I think this is where he films his podcast from, so I recognize it. But
make a little bit of mood lighting. Go ahead.
Are the Democrats not thinking big enough to change the relationship between, this whole idea of having to fight?
Pause it for a second.
To lower it.
Just okay, it's been teed up. Are you not thinking big enough? Fight. Big. Tell me what the big vision is.
The relationship between, this whole idea of having to fight to lower insulin costs, as though that's we got 10 drugs that we can now negotiate with. Don't they have to be clearer, stronger, and change that relationship to get government to deliver these services directly and effectively?
Go, John.
Well, I think the Affordable Care Act, it's been an interesting journey, and
I like that phrase.
No, a very important one.
Yes.
In terms of what has happened transformationally, you're talking about more than 100 million Americans with pre-existing.
You pause it. I'm sorry, I couldn't
healthcare
help myself. He is talking like a contestant on The Bachelor, talking about their journey, getting to know this person over the past 3 months. It's like he's talking about a friendship or some casual relationship. What do you mean the journey with the Affordable Care Act? Yes, the Republicans tried to dismantle it, which is why we have to keep improving it and proposing a Medicare for All system or whatever. I don't care about the journey and the litigation about the Affordable Care Act.
There is a way to even, putting aside the sort of the deficiencies in the Affordable Care Act, you don't say journey.
Yeah.
Because you say fight. Because the fight was Republicans wanted Americans to have no health insurance. They didn't want the insurance to be quality health insurance. They didn't want Medicaid to be expanded. There was a fight. We wasn't like we were in a boat and we were sort of floating down the river on a journey.
This sort of non-specific, really kind of not even political speak is how you do good in interviews for corporate jobs.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre.
I'm meeting at the intersection of synergy.
You're talking about more than 100 million Americans with pre-existing healthcare conditions who now have coverage because of the Affordable Care Act, who otherwise would be left to the public market, the insurance market, and healthcare insurers, many of whom would have no.
It's not the public market; it's the private market. Yes, it's the private market. Again, this has been my point about the ACA. The full name of it was the PPI, the Patient Protection Initiative, I think it was, and Affordable Care Act. The patient protection part worked. That was the 100 million with pre-existing conditions. That was no rescission, no annual or lifetime caps. But it was a fight.
Public market, the insurance market, and healthcare insurers, many of whom would have no intention of allowing them affordable access to the healthcare that they need to live. That's more than 100 million Americans, young people who have transitioned out of college or hit age 21, but were in the workforce since high school, at that point, they would generally have lost their insurance coverage. They could not continue to be on their parents' plan. Now that was extended to the age of 26. That's been transformational.
So,
we've made the point
short
through
answer,
the
pause real quick, is that we did enough with Obamacare. Why are you looking at us? That's this entire party establishment, and all, like, they exist just to say we do enough.
Huh?
Why don't you reward us for doing enough?
I don't know if I've ever seen someone speak who blinks as much as he does, but it appears as if he's not blinking. It's strange. It's almost like there's no there behind the eyes. I mean, I get what he's saying. It was a journey. Through that journey, we achieved some things. What was your question? What should we do? Let's just talk about what we've done. Are you aware of Social Security?
Oh, yeah, it's past facing again, which was the whole Biden campaign, which we were like, okay, this is a big problem. Even when Harris took over, stop looking towards the past and offer something for the future. And it's like, how since Trump got elected in November, they haven't come up with a plan.
Because they're too busy killing all the plans. The Green Dream or whatever.
Yeah.
I find it pretty amazing also that in some of the reporting on the messaging that Biden's comms team nixed the "we're not going back" messaging as being too looking into the past, when that actually to me seems more rejecting the past, while everything other than that substantively was only focused on the past.
Yes.
Like we're not going back actually seemed like, okay, we are leaving the past in the past, and every other thing was like we don't have to check we don't have to change anything.
I mean, the ACA, like the Democrats lost with young men, right? With what, Gen Z? They don't remember the negotiations about the Affordable Care Act. All they can think about is like, oh my gosh, when I'm 26, I'm going to be off my parents' insurance if they even have insurance to keep me on. Like, what are you going to do for me now?
Go ahead.
To the age of 26. That's been transformational. We've made the point through the Affordable Care Act that being a woman is not a pre-existing condition.
Thank God.
It is not a reason to deny health care coverage. And before the Affordable Care Act, it had been. But I think the biggest success in some ways of the Affordable Care Act, which Republicans for 8 years obsessed about taking down, until finally politically the American people said enough. And we took the House back in 2018, and they've pretended not to want to touch the Affordable Care Act ever since. But if they got a chance, they would. Is that when that battle was being waged, and I wasn't in Congress at the time,
right,
it was still unclear, John, in America, whether healthcare was a right or a privilege. That was an open question.
Unclear in your party.
It's no longer an open question. We at least understand that access to high quality, affordable healthcare is a right.
If it's a human right, I'm sorry. If it's a human right, we are falling We are falling so damn short.
Healthcare is not a right. Access
to healthcare. Okay, well, so the 26 million people who are uninsured as of, in the 2023 data, were they just like not grabbing onto that access? Did they choose not to access? They said, "Thank you so much, but I'm going to reject the healthcare," or was it because they can't afford it?
This is all just an ass covering operation. And I remember Barack Obama was on a basketball podcast, The Young Man and the Three, talking with Tyrese Halliburton in the run up to the election, and the question was, like in the example, like, what do we need to do to get people to know the stakes? And Obama's spiel was, well, sometimes you can't see all the things we're doing, but just know that an old lady down the street might be getting, $60 off of her medicine every month. And I'm sorry, that's great for that old lady. That is not enough to win in politics, especially after what happened to the economy under Barack Obama, and the recovery. Wake up.
And I'm sympathetic to messaging during election season, but we're 2 years away from the midterms.
It's always election season.
Be in opposition. Yeah. Be in opposition. I understand that that's what happens, especially in the presidential campaign. You're making decisions and sometimes they don't work out, like the Liz Cheney of it all. But by God, when all that's required of you right now is to be in opposition, be in opposition.
All right, just one update. We are about a month away from the government shutdown. Do we know the exact date?
March 14th.
Okay, so a little bit more than a month and 3 days. And wait, the 14th is a Saturday, isn't it?
So it'd be the 14th at midnight would probably be the
Probably
date then?
13th at midnight, I would imagine, is the shutdown. But nevertheless, there are two major questions that need to be, that are going to be essentially on the table as to whether the government shuts down. One is, do the Democrats refuse to participate in the process whatsoever, or at least in the voting process? Do they refuse to vote for a budget bill? And I guess 14th is a Friday. Do they refuse to vote for a budget bill because of all this stuff that's going on? We don't know what the status of what's going to be going on a month from now. And if they withhold all their votes, that means that essentially the Republicans need every vote that they have in the House. They have a margin of what, 3 or 4 by March 7th? And they need every one of those votes to vote for the bill. The problem that they have is they want big tax cuts. They're going to do reconciliation, so they don't have to worry about the filibuster. They've got 2, I think, bites at the reconciliation apple in 2025 because of the way that scheduling goes. Reconciliation is a special bill that is privileged and is not subject to the filibuster. It's an up or down vote in both houses. The problem that they have is that they want to pass these huge tax cuts for rich people. But they also have some members of their party who believe that adding to the deficit or debt, even if it's to cut taxes, is a sin, a mortal sin. And they need to offset these tax cuts with cuts to people maybe getting food from the government or getting health care or whatever it is. And there's just, the math does not add up unless they start to look at things like non-discretionary spending, that being Social Security and Medicare. It's non-discretionary because those are self-paying. They come completely distinct from the operational budget that we have on an annual basis. Donald Trump supposedly does not want to touch Medicaid, which is the third element of that non-discretionary spending. He doesn't want to touch Medicaid, supposedly, but the Republicans do. Here is mandatory spending, again, something that just happens. They don't vote for it. It's not in the operational budget of the U.S. government. And here is Representative Riley Moore of West Virginia on with Maria Bartiromo's on Fox Business.
Time opportunity here in unified government to actually address mandatory spending.
Yeah.
Mandatory spending is the biggest driver of the debt in this country. And so we have to address that. And that's what the House Republicans are so solely focused on while taking care of all these other agenda items that we've discussed, taxes and all the like.
So you do believe that there will be an effort to cut into mandatory spending in order to get some offsets for some of the spending in the reconciliation bill?
Yes, that's what we've been discussing. And as I said, I think this is our once in a lifetime opportunity. You know, you see government shutdowns over discretionary spending all the time in the appropriations bills. Just to be clear, discretionary spending is only 26% of every dollar that's spent annually in the United States. So we got nearly
you don't have a lot of choices, yeah.
Mandatory, and if we don't address that, I mean, we're in a world of hurt. You got 75% of it's mandatory spend time opportunity.
You notice how they frame this conversation in a way that just completely precludes the obvious solution. If they were really, they care, and I understand that taxing and spending, it's a whole different thing, but just using their premise against them, if they really cared about reducing the deficit, they could just raise taxes. They could raise taxes on the rich. That's how you're able to raise more revenue, and then that would begin to shrink. But that is not what they want to do. So they need to find it another way, which means cutting into the health care for millions and millions of people. We have like 61 million people who are on social or on Medicare, 71 million people who are on Medicaid. That's all a part of the mandatory spending program.
Yep.
72 million, sorry.
So they're going to come for Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security.
And CHIP, 7 million kids are on, which is like essentially for low-income children, that health care. They'll come for that as well.
Because there's just not enough in discretionary spending for them to cut. And half of that discretionary spending is the military, and they ain't going to cut that.
But what about the woke
they're
stuff?
going to cut out the woke stuff.
Yeah. What's the dollar figure on the woke stuff?
$75. $75.
Right. But it needs to be an increase to keep up with inflation, so.
$78.
They will raise the military budget. Mark my words, like they do every time. They will raise the military budget. And I think they're probably going to target SNAP, that's a part of mandatory spending.
No.
No?
SNAP is not. CHIPS is not. These are all discretionary.
Okay.
To the extent there will be a shift in military spending, it's going to be from the established contractors to Palantir.
All right, let's get to this clip. This is a very, very funny clip. You remember that guy Milo Yiannopoulos? We haven't heard much from him. He was drummed out of the conservative movement for a while because it turned out that he was gay and married to a man, and they were looking for a way to get him out. And then he was like, he was basically sort of espousing that libertarian view that pedophilia is really just sort of is a social construct. I mean, it is. But it's not necessarily one that we should probably get rid of. But Yiannopoulos is on with Tim Pool. And who's this guy?
This is Nick Ox. He is the founder of the Proud Boys Hawaii chapter.
Oh,
joke.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Excuse me. Formerly known as the Proud Boys.
Yes, right.
The not so Proud Boys. The Nazi Proud Boys.
Hawaii
Not so Proud
Boys?
Boys.
Go surf, you loser.
Yeah, right? How could you be unhappy and like angry in Hawaii?
Many of you know the backstory of Tim Pool's recent scandal, where it turned out he was getting millions upon millions of dollars from a company known as Tenant Media, which was a front group for, or a cutout, I guess, as they say, for Russian intelligence. And which is not to say that Tim was told what to say, but rather that they enjoyed his commentary enough to support it beyond a typical membership level. And but here is this exchange, which is pretty funny because, Tim wasn't the only person who got snowed by this. Dave Rubin did too. And that guy, Benny Johnson. They all made a ton of money, like just an enormous amount of money from the Russians unknowingly because they didn't do due diligence per se as to where they were getting all this money. But this happened.
And just a content warning if you're listening at work, this is Milo, so you know the score.
This direction. What we have is an indicator in USAID that establishes $38 billion, mostly being used for the most ridiculous things you've ever heard of. It's all transsexual theater in South America. That's not just one thing. It's all that. Okay, cool. Not too surprising that this is connected to U.S. and foreign influence. My question is, how much money total of our entitlements is not just the classic welfare in the form of, say, food stamps, but grant money for just the most corrupt and ridiculous transsexual theater in regular America, not just South America, right? We need to find out what this final number is because it's everything. It's not USA, the National Park Service came out.
I have a pause it 1 second. We have to address the level of ignorance that was in there. When he says regular America, he's talking to about the United States of America. Regular America. That's honestly, I think,
says the Hawaiian Proud Boys.
The punchline of a joke in the past. But He's saying now we need to look into entitlements, which traditionally people have referred to as Social Security and Medicare. And he's now claiming that all that money is actually going to transsexual dance parties in regular America. This is a person who honestly, I think, like in any other context, who people would alert this person's relatives and said, like, you've got to come and pick this guy up.
Somebody watching this
having
guy?
an episode.
I mean, by definition, Social Security and Medicare are in its own pool of money and can't go to the kinds of things that he's talking about. This is just like basic understanding.
Supposedly.
And
Until Brock gets a hand on it.
relatedly, from earlier this morning, Trump has signed an executive order pausing enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which forbids companies in the United States from bribing foreign officials. So, I don't know, I guess this is not really about rooting out corruption in the federal government. I mean,
well, it's rooting out corruption in the federal government and transferring it over to corruption in foreign governments.
Okay. All right. Just making sure I got this straight.
Theater in regular America, not just South America, right? We need to find out what this final number is because it's everything. It's not USA, the National Park Service came out.
We're never going to get there. I have billions a year. I have a question for you and for everybody who's listening, or I should say, I have a tip, I suppose. We know for a fact that there are many popular liberal podcasts that run nonprofits or have nonprofits buying ad spots. There are any popular liberal podcasts.
Whatever you want to call it.
We're going to find out.
There are. Remember David Pakman after the election. There's no popular podcast.
So let me. This point I'm making is that.
Let me just take this moment to say that our membership and our subscriber numbers did not go down after the election. But go ahead.
Some did.
Ad spots. There are any popular liberal podcasts.
Whatever you want to call it.
We're going to find out.
Remember David Pakman after the election. There's no popular podcast.
So let me. This point I'm making is that who is funding these shows and how are they being propped up? One, obviously YouTube is propping them up, despite the fact they're clearly not popular, as we just saw the results of the election. However, we do know that many of them sell ad space to powerful nonprofits. I believe that if you track the
I doubt that Tim is talking about us, even though I brought this up with him and he was completely embarrassed by it. But you've heard our roster of ads today. One was an organization in Rhode Island that hires refugees to make granola. And the other was, what was it? A cleaning product.
I mean, is Give Directly what he's referring to? Or, well, I mean, we also had that Biden-Harris sponsorship where
a secret one.
We had
by a crusading journalist.
I mean,
as we just saw the results of the election. However, we do know that many of them sell ad space to powerful nonprofits. I believe that if you track the government spending through these nonprofits, you will find it goes from government to NGO into the hands of liberal pundits.
David Pakman.
I don't.
Now he might not even know, and that's the important thing.
Oh, yeah, well,
no. Let me. This is important. You can accuse him of knowing. You can accuse him of intentionally taking money. My point is this.
Pause it for a second, right there. Now, the reason why Tim wants to have that clarification is because sometimes people like Tim end up getting paid by the Russian government and don't realize it. So just so you know, again, I also want to reiterate, we don't sell any ad space to any not-for-profit that is sponsored by the U.S. government. The only one I think is GiveWell, which is a charity navigator thing. But
yes, we do not sell, that was facetious earlier, any ad space for political campaigns or take money secretly, as Tim seemed to have done, and not disclose
Although
it publicly.
I might take ads and run them free for that guy running against Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco.
Yes.
That if you track the government spending through these nonprofits, you will find it goes from government to NGO into the hands of liberal pundits.
David Pakman.
Now he might not even know, and that's the important thing.
Oh, yeah, well,
no. Let me. This is important. You can accuse him of knowing. You can accuse him of intentionally taking money. My point is this.
I would never accuse David Pakman of knowing anything.
Sure. There very well may be.
That was coming.
There very well may be individuals.
What happened with those guys? Did Pakman and Milo have Milo on recently and embarrass him?
It's just Pakman's thing after the election that they're talking about.
knowing you can accuse him of intentionally taking money. My point is this.
I would never accuse David Pakman of knowing anything.
Sure. There very well may be
that was coming.
There very well may be individuals who their ad person comes to them and says, "This NGO wants to spend $100,000 in ads on your show,"
Don't
and
you
they
think
say,
you're
"Done."
doing that conservative thing of giving too much credit?
No, I'm saying in general, big picture.
No, they know exactly where the money's coming from. Dave Rubin knew where the money was coming from when it was coming from Russia. He used it to buy his children.
That is 100% false. And you know that ropes me into it, and I can verify it's 100% false.
All right.
Completely untrue.
It is so,
and this is important big picture stuff because USAID is funneling money into NGOs.
It's irresponsible in the extreme to the point of ludicrous negligence to not know where hundreds of thousands of dollars are coming from. To not even ask.
Oh, pause it for 1 second. Now, pause it for 1 second. Now, well, let me explain to you what's going on here. Milo does not realize that Tim Pool was roped into this. And when Tim says you're roping me into this now, Milo still it doesn't register. Now, I just want to make this clear, just so that Tim has some cover in this conversation. Milo is saying it is the height of irresponsibility to not know where hundreds of thousands of dollars are coming from. Just to be clear, Tim got over several $1 million. So maybe once you cross the threshold
no
of 1 million,
left.
you have less responsibility because it's no longer several $100,000.
It's called the responsibility donut hole.
Exactly.
Responsible in the extreme to the point of ludicrous negligence to not know where hundreds of thousands of dollars are coming from. To not even ask.
And that's not the story at all. So if you knew what you're talking about, maybe it sounds smarter.
All right. Well,
but clearly, as the story has already been reported and you haven't read any of it, which involves me, which I find particularly insulting, is that certainly Dave, I, as well as Benny, did ridiculous due diligence in digging and trying to figure out what the source of the revenue was beyond your typical ad deal. So when I get an ad sale person who comes to me and
Pause it for a second. This ridiculous due diligence involved demanding to see a colored PDF one-page CV of Mr. Edward Gregorian.
Yeah, we know it's ridiculous. It's why we're ridiculing you about it.
Yeah, I think he meant ridiculous the other way. So is
ridicule
Milo trolling?
worthy.
Does he know?
No, Milo doesn't know.
I don't
and
know.
Now Tim is getting offended.
He's a troll. He's got those glasses on. He could be messing with him. I'm not ruling it out. I'm not ruling it out.
All right. Let's go back a little bit because I want to watch Tim get very, very angry. Tim thinks that Milo knows, but I'm pretty sure that Milo doesn't
I think you're
know.
probably right. I'm just saying it's possible.
Extreme to the point of ludicrous negligence to not know where hundreds of thousands of dollars are coming from. To not even ask.
And that's not the story at all. So if you knew what you're talking about, maybe it sounds smarter.
All right. Well,
but clearly, as the story has already been reported and you haven't read any of it, which involves me, which I find particularly insulting, is that certainly Dave, I, as well as Benny, did ridiculous due diligence in digging and trying to figure out what the source of the revenue was beyond your typical ad deal. So when I get an ad sale person who comes to me and says, this company
I didn't remember that you were involved in that.
This company wants to sell, they want to buy $100,000 in ad reads over this amount of time. No one anywhere in media says, tell me who their investors are, get me on the phone with him. And when this stuff went down, Dave, Benny, I, and many others said, we want to know what this is all about. Who is this involved with? And when you get a prominent conservative personality,
I just want to say, we've actually had sponsors who we found out that they had production facilities in the West Bank and cut them off.
Right.
Now, maybe that's different from who the investors are.
And even then, didn't that go through a third-party person with ads, right?
Oh, our broker came to us and said we were selling ads for them, and then we found out that they were doing business in the West Bank, and I went back to the broker. I'm like,
and it would be a little different
Can't do it.
if that company, which will go unnamed, was coming to us directly via, maybe, I don't know, Bradley, and saying, we're going to give you multiple millions of dollars and you don't necessarily need to do an ad read. This is just to subsidize your show because we love it so much.
Oh, I wouldn't be suspicious of that at all. People do that every day.
Yeah, it's just a normal thing.
It's a total normal thing. A couple $1 million and, oh, you're just going to replay the show on your platform? Oh, okay.
And when this stuff went down, Dave, Benny, I, and many others said, we want to know what this is all about. Who is this involved with? And when you get a prominent conservative personality based out of Nashville with an American company and says, here's the investors, they're going to talk to you, explain it. Here's the proof. We go, okay, well, like a prominent conservative personality is running a company out of Nashville.
About Lauren Chen.
Lauren Chen.
Was she a prominent personality?
Certainly was. Hundreds of thousands of followers on the Blaze. Everybody knew she was, and she had a story, and so we did some digging.
I've never heard of her before this.
And so this is the point.
I didn't remember you.
This is the big picture.
Remember you were
keep them up there and go back a little bit, because this is where Milo backs off. Doesn't realize that Tim was going to be so sensitive about it. But we actually have a tape from Edward Gregorian, who's talking to Tim. We just have the Gregorian side. Let's just roll that tape. Hello, is this Tim? Tim, it's Edward Gregorian. I'm here. Just wanted to call and tell you that the money is absolutely fine. Don't worry about the thing. I'm from Belgium, but if my accent sounds strange, it's because I moved around a lot as a kid. Army brat.
I'm the kind of person who, when a Blaze flunky tells me they have 600 or six-figure offers for me, I'm like, say no more, Lauren.
But Tim, I commend you for all the great work you're doing in investigating me. But I have to go now. Bye-bye. Great outgoing voice message you have.
You go, okay, well, like a prominent conservative personality is running a company out of Nashville.
About Lauren Chen.
Lauren Chen.
Was she a prominent personality?
Certainly
he's
was.
so catty.
Hundreds of thousands of followers on the Blaze. Everybody knew she was, and she had a story, and so we did some digging.
I've never heard of her before this.
And so this is the point.
I didn't remember you.
This is the big
I didn't remember you were a victim of that. So I apologize for casting aspersions if that was your impression.
So to imply,
I didn't remember you were a victim of that. But
now let's go to the big picture.
Pause it for a second.
USAID.
It's interesting because Milo's just changed his whole tune. Literally 90 seconds ago, it was beyond the height of irresponsibility to not discover where hundreds of thousands of dollars came from. And now he's saying, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were a victim of that.
It's so funny. Tim just desperately wants to do all this dumb smearing of like, oh, look at all this political USAID money. That's just like subscriptions of people who work for the political.
Except for Tim has this big sort of monkey on his back, and Milo just basically.
Yes.
Tim was sort of like tiptoeing along the knife's edge, and I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to be able to deliver this, and no one's going to remember that I am actually the flunky.
Yeah. I'm the genuine article.
I am the genuine article of being bought and paid for. And Milo brings it up. I was a victim. Go.
I apologize for casting aspersions if that was your impression.
So to imply,
I didn't remember you were a victim of that. But
now let's go to the big picture on USAID and other NGO funding.
Tim looks like he's
now
crying.
Certainly that affects us. When someone, I'll say it again, we right now have probably 30 advertisers who've come to us and wanted to buy ads, and we said we're on a holding pattern right now doing negotiations. They're offering us $50,000 sometimes for one ad read. One company says we'll give you $50,000 to promote our company. Do we say, I want the CEO on the phone, I want to know who funded them, I want to know where that funding came from?
I just want to make something clear here. This was not an ad buy. When we do an ad, it's quite clear who's paying for it. Now, if for whatever reason, Hello Tushy has a secret agenda of selling a different bidet product from their rival, but they promote their own, but they have a secret, or maybe Hello Tushy buys an ad from us and they promote the bidet, but the reason why they're doing it is because they have a specific resentment against the toilet paper company and they don't want people to use toilet paper, or whatever hidden agenda is, that it's silly because it's laid out there. The problem with what Tim is talking about, he's comparing apples and oranges. It's one thing to have a sponsor that you think is problematic and decide we don't want it. Different, people have different sort of like thresholds in which they, we may not do any type of finance advertising. We may not do, but we'll do Seder advertising. Okay, different people can. This is funding that was completely hidden from the listeners and viewers of his program.
Yep.
To the tune of millions upon millions of dollars. And you never, you never reveal, we're getting this show is subsidized by blankety blank blank blank. It was completely unclear. Now, Milo seems to think it is completely irresponsible and doesn't believe that someone could actually be duped in that way. And I think that's a
fair assessment.
I think that's a fair position to have. But Tim is arguing that's not. But the weird thing is that Tim keeps changing the category of which he's talking about. Nobody said anything about advertisers.
But he's talking about USAID, and I guess this is just a quick brief aside. I sent this, Bradley, like the Barry Weiss tweet. This is like the end goal of all of this is to make more news like Tim Pool, or to make more news like the Free Press, that Barry Weiss's outfit, where she's talking about NPR and PBS funding. Okay, it's just $535 million, she says, and she's basically casting aspersions on the idea that NPR and PBS should get public funding from the government. And they're using this veneer of corruption to make this argument, where the Free Press was literally invested in by Mark Andreessen and Andreessen Horowitz early on. What they want to do is create more and more incentive for private money to take over to take over our media institutions. When PBS has funded by viewers like you, instead they wanted to said funded by, Palantir or something like that. What's more corrupting? Tax, like a set small amount relative to the federal government of tax dollars that are allocated towards this kind of media, or private for-profit venture capital money going towards these outfits? Which would you like to decide? Because the latter is when you get Barry Weiss or you get Tim Pool. Anyway.
Barry Weiss is partnered with a descendant of Henry Miller, the Cattle King of California, one of the largest landowners of the United States.
Also financed by Harlan Crow, who, he's the guy who owns Clarence Thomas.
Anyway.
They're like Rogan is in on this too with Brett Weinstein. All of our people who criticize us are fake because they know that they are all they all have sugar daddies.
Yep.
One ad read. One company says we'll give you $50,000 to promote our company. Do we say, I want the CEO on the phone, I want to know who funded them, I want to know where that funding came from?
Nobody does that, but that wasn't quite...
And this is the point when I say about David Pakman,
Milo was about to say that.
I'm saying, when we know those things happen, take a look at where USAID was giving their money and see how much of those NGOs were buying ad reads in media, because they are.
You're not going to like this, but to take money from somebody so obviously ludicrously insubstantial as Lauren Chen and not ask more questions seems stupid to me.
Except there were questions asked.
I don't want to continue this because I'm not trying to attack you. I didn't remember that you were roped.
The big picture is,
I didn't remember you were caught up in this.
When we have 30 sponsors, do you think it's reasonable for any media company to say get their investors on the phone, or do you only talk to their sales reps?
I've been interviewed once by Lauren Chen, and
okay, we're beyond that.
I certainly.
The point I'm making is no company, David Pakman, Kyle Kalinske, Dave Rubin, me, or otherwise, is going beyond the sales rep and their press.
Kyle is fully funded by subscription and doesn't take any advertisers, and says it like every second that he can. So it's a horrible example.
So the NGOs haven't been able to get into him yet.
Yeah, he doesn't even do what we do with Hello Tushy. He doesn't do any ad reads.
Look at Tim Pool surrounding himself with other people to hide behind them when none of it applies.
Yeah. No.
None of it applies. And even Milo is like, how do I now navigate this thing where Tim is obviously full of excrement, but I don't want to offend him, and but I also have to maintain some personal integrity in this thing. And
can we just change the subject? That doesn't happen on podcasts.
Yeah.
We shouldn't talk about this anymore.
For your sake, go ahead, Bradley.
No company, David Pakman, Kyle Kalinske, Dave Rubin, me, or otherwise, is going beyond the sales rep and their press kit to figure out that USAID or any other government or any other country is funneling things into media to prop them up.
At this size, no, that's true. At this size, that's true. But
not a single company does. I'll tell you, that absolutely is.
Well,
so I bought billboards through Outfront Media.
I've bought billboards. I've done Times Square just like you have.
Absolutely, and never once in any of the ads that we've bought have they come to me and said, "We want your P&L, and we want to know if you have any investors, we want your board of directors." Nobody does it.
Nobody's saying that. I think you have to make room for the possibility, however, although you may have been taken in by a particular scheme, that other people went into it and were very happy not to look too deeply. I don't.
It's not the case for Dave Rubin.
Okay. Why are we stopping here? This is
Have you ever considered?
Oh,
an ad.
They got the guy with the same accent.
We're monetizing this. We can't really.
Oh, this is secretly all by like a hearing company.
Other people went into it and were very happy not to look too deeply. I don't.
It's not the case for Dave Rubin.
Well,
nor Benny nor me. You can speak of anybody else, but I can say for those guys.
I don't necessarily take the views of people who concoct Franken babies for paying women to birth them,
like I said, Milo.
as a high moral standard or
sure. But in this regard, I can tell you.
No, I don't really take his word for anything. I don't take his word for anything for all kinds of reasons, particularly how he treated me. He's a liar. He's a liar.
Sure.
He's a slippery, slimy, gross.
I can say in this one regard that involves me, it's not the case.
I don't.
Oh my God, he's so defensive.
Because you know things other people don't know. But it's not an unreasonable supposition that.
Pause it. I have never ever contemplated. It has never occurred to me for a moment that I would like to have a conversation with Milo Yiannopoulos until today, at this time, when I would love to go deeper into his understanding of Dave Rubin, and also whether he actually in this moment genuinely believes that Tim Pool didn't know, or is just like, I don't want to burn this bridge. I'd be very interesting to hear about that. Go ahead.
One regard that involves me, it's not the case.
I don't know that. You may know that because you know things other people don't know. But it's not an unreasonable supposition that Dave Rubin did. Look, I think we can move on from this. It is no secret that a lot of bad money has gone to people on the right and on the center right. But it's typically the case that right-wing people will go and get investors rather than do advertisers, fake it till they make it, and then they'll get, sort of the big ticket advertisers. So the way Ben Shapiro, the way Candace get famous is they get Wilkes Brothers, or they get some other kind of billionaire money, and they buy engagement, they buy followers, and they sort of propel themselves to the top of the heap, and then fake it till they make it, and then eventually it's kind of sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Everybody does that.
Everybody does not do that.
Well, we've never done anything like
everybody does not do that.
Pause it for a second. Interesting turn. Tim says, and we've been saying this about Ben Shapiro for a long time. They bought millions of dollars of Facebook ads several years ago, and it propelled them. Yep. And then Tim says, everybody does that. And then says, but I didn't do it. Everybody does that. And then realizes, like, whoa, wait. No, I didn't. That's fascinating. I will say right now, definitively, we have never done that. We did one ad buy for $1,500. Now, I've been meaning to do a second one for 6 years, and we're going to. But we just haven't gotten around to it.
Two people who did that, who are
go back. I want to see Tim's little turn. That's fascinating to me. Everybody does that. Oh, I didn't do it.
Do advertisers fake it till they make it, and then they'll get sort of the big ticket advertisers. So the way Ben Shapiro, the way Candace get famous is they get Wilkes Brothers, or they get some other kind of billionaire money, and they buy engagement, they buy followers, and they sort of propel themselves to the top of the heap, and they fake it till they make it, and then eventually it's kind of sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Everybody does that.
Everybody does not do that.
Well, we've never done anything like
everybody
that.
Everybody does not do that. I said two people who did that, who are or demonstrably did that, right? I didn't say everybody did that. I never did that. When I was cancelled, I had the same number of followers as Ben Shapiro and everything. I was growing faster. He was growing more slowly, and 60% of his followers were fake. 100% of mine were organic. In fact, we ran things to get rid of the bots, right? So that's one of the reasons they took me out. No, I didn't say everybody did it, but those two did it. And so on the right, typically, people will take startup capital and they'll invest that way, and then they'll get the big advertisers that are safer, right? On the left, people will take money from pretty much anywhere, and they won't ask too many questions.
All the billionaires I want to give us
right, yeah, all the billionaires, all the big billionaires.
I think that's
hey, Mark Cuban, stop getting into my DMs and asking to give me money, please.
Reed Hastings just keeps giving me a direct deposit every day.
That was awesome.
Great. I mean, Milo has some tea to spill. Wasn't he all across the Kanye and the?
Milo blew the whistle on Kanye's dentist, basically addicting him to nitrous oxide and wanting to have him lead a campaign to legalize nitrous oxide so he could dose everybody else with it too.
Just so you know who the Wilkes brothers are, turns out Dan and Faris Wilkes, their estimated net worth is between the two of them close to $4 billion. They sold a 70% stake in their fracking company, Fractech, for $3.5 billion in 2011. They were frackers. And they have acquired more than 670,000 acres of land in 6 different states. They are the nation's 12th largest landowners. Well, there you go. I wonder why guys who are so interested in fracking would be excited to pay Ben Shapiro so much money.
They love to frack free speech too.
There you go.
They just love it. It's fascinating to see Milo just state what we've all been saying about these guys, though, that they are artificially subsidized by oligarchy into your friends and family's brains. These idiots.
And it's a little bit different than fake it till you make it. It's not just about self-confidence. It's literally where you are propped up. And it becomes self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense that you have been paid to have followers. You were paid followers. And you know what? They used to do this with book sales too. They would push and they probably still
used
do.
to. I mean, these Republican books. Yeah.
They push these right-wing books up to the top of the charts by having institutional sales. The Heritage Foundation will come in and buy 10,000 books in a day, and bingo, it goes right up to the top of the charts. But that was fun to watch. I may even watch the rest of that.
Well, you have to do it on Rumble because they had to pull it down because I think Milo did something extremely racist. So they had to take it out.
That's why that episode's not available.
If you can
on
believe
YouTube.
it, yeah.
What? Seriously?
That's odd.
Turns out Milo did something bad.
Folks, it's now 2:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, of course, went long again. There's a lot of news these days. I'll read 10 IMs and then we'll get out of here. Hyper left Voiter. Matt trying to keep a straight face after trolling Emma about sports definitely made my day. Gold Rush John. The Dems are suffering from a staggering lack of charisma. I've attended more engaging lunch and learns.
Leadership, certainly.
JJ. Poole is saying that receiving millions of Russo-backed dollars is being victimized. Somebody please victimize me.
Yes.
Dave from Jamaica. Mayor Adams did everything right, and they indicted him. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. That's Biden my time. Dave from Jamaica. I think the Rubicon has been crossed when everyone has their own truth. Truth is dead. They wanted to drown government in the bathroom. This is hilarious because even Milo backs down. Tim still looks bad. Reminds me of Radio Paola. Force a hit song. Yep.
Yeah.
Plants.
Noah from Tampa. I was thinking more Bob's Burgers, Matt. I will lift up mine eyes to the hills from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord. I don't want to read all this stuff.
Is this the Jeffries impression?
It's a bummer already.
Oh, okay. This is how Democratic consultants think about politics. I've heard campaigning described as dating the country and winning elections as tying the knot.
That does work then. If Republicans are dating, they're the ones that are slipping roofies in your drink, and the Democrats are the guys saying they're nice guys, but ghosting you after the third date.
JM, thanks to the MR Discord's book club, I've gotten a great primer for today's guest. Fear Itself by Ira Katznelson. It's been very illuminating so far.
It's a good book. I've mentioned it before. I think Katznelson is passed on, or at least pretty old right now. But it's a book about basically the global turn towards authoritarianism that, frankly, only our country was really able to turn into some kind of social democracy. A lot, so obviously, famously, Germany and Italy fell to Nazism.
Nicola, capitalism is already authoritarian. It's workers and their allies who make it tolerable, but that doesn't detract too much from his point. All right, 3 more. Sorry about the phone calls today. Bullprog. I had always wondered why conservatives were against the Legal Government Buying Trade Quality Indices Act. LGBTQI. 2 more. Freddy Krueger. The Democrats in this moment remind me of the Catholic Church right before Reformation. While Martin Luther was printing inflammatory pamphlets in German, the language most literate people could read, the Catholic Church would only communicate in Latin, the language of the elites. The Democrats are fumbling in this moment so hard. White knuckle gripping the status quo is literally the worst possible response.
Also, when people in your laity are acting out, you can either call it a witch hunt or you can embrace it as a reformation. And the Democrats decided to call it a witch hunt and stamp it out, and the Republicans encouraged it and welcomed it into the fold.
Catfish James, for the final IM of the day. Catfish writes, spot on impression, Sam. That must have been my Edward Gregorian.
Edward Gregorian, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bradley, Matt, Emma, great job today, folks. See you tomorrow.